Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, I have a simple question for the Philadelphia Phillies. How in the world are you still letting Taijuan Walker pitch in games? Unbelievable last night. I'm taking him to task on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me for some of my other work in the sports talk space over at 97.5 The Fanatic on the radio here in Philadelphia. I've been on air for 5 years. This is my third year as a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member. Third year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started in today's episode. Well, we got to start with last night in this Taijuan Walker situation. We're also going to preview Game 2 of the series with the New York Mets and Cristopher Sanchez on the bump. And we're going to talk about some time wasting that's going on with the Philadelphia Phillies right now as we look at clinching scenarios as we wrap up. But folks, if you've watched this show, listened to this show, know anything about this show, or me, if you've heard me on the radio, seen me on TV, you've heard me talk about the Phillies, you know that I am a positive, nearly to a fault person when it comes to this baseball team. Some people have commented that I view that they can do no wrong, and sometimes maybe it does come across that way. I understand that, but I do have faith in my evaluation of teams, and the way that I see this Phillies team is a very talented baseball team, and that's why I give them so much slack. They've had the track record. They've had postseason success. They haven't won the big one yet, but they've won in the regular season. They've won in the postseason. They have great players up and down the lineup. They have a great pitching staff, a great bullpen. I trust the manager. All of this stuff leads to me. I trust the GM and the president of baseball operations and the owner all the way up the ladder. Part of that leads to me saying, I'm going to give them grace when grace is deserved. But there are times where they do stuff that I just cannot fathom. And I can get as angry as anybody about the Philadelphia Phillies. And I absolutely was last night watching that absolutely miserable effort from Taijuan Walker. I'm pulling no punches today about Walker and about the Phillies making the decision to put him back out there. When I saw that he was starting, I was like, great, here we go. We're really going to do this again. We're really going to put this guy out on the mound. And I said, I never want to see pitch in a Philadelphia Phillies uniform again, who was moved to the bullpen as a long relief option because there was nothing else you could do for him, and you didn't want to eat his $18 million contract. And guess what? He wasn't even that good at that. But you put him back in the starting spot, in the fifth spot in the rotation, because what? You don't have any other better options? I get it. You look at some of the guys who have stepped in, Colby Allard, Michael Mercado, Tyler Phillips. You don't want to run a bullpen game in game one of a 4-game series that matters a lot because you don't want to burn arms, even though they had to end up burning some arms yesterday because Taijuan Walker flat out stinks right now. But it's just, you can't tell me. You can't look me in the eyes. If Rob Thompson or Dave Dombrowski or anyone was sitting right across from me right now and looking me in the eyes and told me that Taijuan Walker was the best option or the only option, I would tell them they're crazy. I would. And that's what I'm saying right now to you. There's not a single other player under contract with a pulse that you could pitch that's not Taijuan Walker. You might say, Connor, that's dramatic. Connor, you're going too far. There can't be like a million other options. I think there actually might be. I legitimately think that you could pull up any pitcher on the AAA team and get 2-3 innings of some type of semblance of okay pitching. You know what Taijuan Walker's finishing stat line was last night? In 3 1/3 innings pitched, he gave up 8 earned runs and 4 homers. You can't win baseball games like that. You can't even compete in baseball games like that. The Phillies offense, they scored 6 runs. They did what they needed to do in that game. If you put any other pitcher in the rotation, or probably a lot of other pitchers in the organization in that spot, you're going to get a better chance to win than what happened with Taijuan Walker. And even worse, you had opportunities in that game, in the second, in the fourth, to go take Taijuan Walker out of it in tied or close ball games. And instead, what do? Go get back out there, Taijuan. Give up another bomb. Make us feel worse. Oh, is it 2-run the first time? Oh, he won't do that again. Oh, it's another 2-run? Oh, well, he won't do that again. Oh, it's a 3-run. Great. And the next thing you know, you're in a situation where it's 8 runs allowed in just over 3 innings of work. I mean, that's terrible. That's flat out terrible. And this shouldn't be news because Taijuan Walker was flat out terrible when they made the decision to move him to the bullpen. You can't win with him on the mound. There's no possible way. I don't care if you put the best 9 player, I guess, 9 with the DH, 9 players in the lineup. If it's like Ohtani and Judge and Bobby Witt and everybody who's having amazing seasons around Major League Baseball, you put them in a lineup and Taijuan Walker starts that game, you're going to lose. Because he has been that bad. And the Phillies saw that and decided that that was the option that they wanted to take. It's flat out patently ridiculous that they decided to start him and then left him in the game as long as they did and tried to feed it to this fan base as a true chance that they're going to win a game against a division rival in a spot where you're playing for clinching playoff contention. I know I said yesterday, imagine what the great thing would be if Taijuan Walker went out there and in what was probably his final start as a Philadelphia Philly, he would be able to win a start that gives the Phillies a postseason berth. Wouldn't that be an awesome story? Guess what? Real life is a little bit more tough than that sometimes. In reality last night was Taijuan Walker still can't put together even a remotely good start, and he cost you that ball game. Or rather, the Phillies organization cost you that ball game because part of me does feel bad for Taijuan Walker, the individual. I'm not telling you he's a bad person. I'm not telling you he's done anything to hurt anybody. I'm not wishing anything bad to happen to Taijuan Walker. No, anyone who does that, you're a loser. But what I will say is I don't feel bad for Taijuan Walker, the baseball player, because you're getting paid $18 million this year to go out and perform. And also, you had the nerve during last postseason or after last postseason to complain that you didn't throw in the postseason. Guess what, buddy? Maybe this is why. Maybe you're not good enough anymore. And I'm sorry to say that, but it happens to every athlete, and it looks like it's happening right now to Taijuan Walker. I got to talk about some positive things because I'm going to lose my mind, but frankly, I'm annoyed with the Philadelphia Phillies organization for putting us through that last night. Here's the positive part, though, as we talk about last night's game in general. It says nothing about the team, right? The way I look at it is the Philadelphia Phillies would have won that game 6-2 last night. The other pitchers that gave up 2 runs, okay. But the 8 earned that Taijuan Walker had, you take that off the scoreboard, it's a totally different game. I mean, the offense looked like they were in good shape. Trey Turner hit a ball to the moon, maybe past it. It might still be out there in orbit somewhere. That was great to see. I mean, you had 6 runs. You had 6 runs on 8 hits, which means you were cashing in opportunities. The Phillies made stuff work. The top of the lineup again, Kyle Schwarber, 2 runs scored and an RBI. Trey Turner, we know we had the 1 hit, but it was that home run, 2 RBIs. Bryce Harper, 2 RBIs. Like, you had production in your lineup, but unfortunately, you can't put Taijuan Walker out there. Again, the good news is you don't have much longer you have to worry about the 5th spot in the rotation because once you get to the postseason, we won't have to think about the name Taijuan Walker. We won't have to think about 5th starter. You've got 4 guys that are really, really good arms. But right now, whenever that 5th day rolls up, it's a nightmare for the Philadelphia Phillies and for Phillies fans. And I'm going to be honest, I can't believe that they would go and put a guy out there that they know to be so non-competitive and expect anything to go different. They deserve to lose that game for starting him. They deserve to lose that game for leaving him in. They just flat out deserve to lose that baseball game last night to the New York Mets. And I think tonight's going to go totally different. But again, like listen to some of the names that hits. Kyle Schwarber won, Turner won, Harper won. Castellanos had a hit. Bryson Stott had a hit. Romuto had a hit. Marsh went 2 for 4. I mean, the only one of your main guys that did not have a hit in the contest, I don't count Cal Stevenson, who was playing center field. I don't count him as one of your main guys. But the only guy that didn't have it was Alec Boehm, who was 0 for 4, and he's still working his way back. Now, the Phillies did strike out 12 times, and people might look at that and say, wow, 16 in the final 2 games against Milwaukee, 16 each, and then 12 in the first game against the Mets. To that, I say, guys, they scored 6 runs. Like, strikeouts are annoying, but that's not the story of last night's game. The story of last night's game is your pitching was non-competitive because you put a non-competitive player out there on the mound. And that's on the organization, and that's on Taijuan Walker, and that's something that is guaranteed to not repeat itself today because Cristopher Sanchez, whether he's good or bad, is going to be better than what Taijuan Walker put out there on the mound. And that'll give you a better chance to win. So I guess you just wipe it and move on. Like, it doesn't change the ceiling of what this team is. I don't even think about last night's game as like a true loss, because I know that that guy that cost you that game is not going to be playing important innings for this Phillies team. So you kind of just wipe it and just say, all right, well, it was a stupid decision. You deserve to lose. You did. We move on. You're still a good baseball team. You're still in great shape when it comes to the postseason push. I mean, you're still looking at the standings, have the best record in baseball by the tiebreaker over the Los Angeles Dodgers. But here's the thing that's annoying, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later. But I'm looking at the standings, and the Phillies' best record tied with the Dodgers, but have the tiebreaker at 91-62. The Dodgers have clinched. The Yankees have clinched. The Guardians have clinched. The Milwaukee Brewers have all clinched. The Phillies have yet to clinch. And it's not like they're not going to, but it's getting annoying. We'll talk later about the wasting time and everything that I'm talking about there. But coming up next, we're going to preview game 2 of this series, an actual game where you're putting an actual pitcher out there that the Phillies actually have a chance to win, and probably should. We'll discuss it coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, and that's the formula for winning championships. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors, they've got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. So maybe you want superchargers or roof racks or exhaust kits or LED headlights or so much more. Whatever you're thinking of, whether it's speed, power, or style that you like, eBay Motors has you covered. They got over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part's guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's preview game 2 of this series against the New York Mets. And here's where the series gets interesting. You only need 2 games against them. Win 2 games, you are the NL East champions. You only need 1 game, and you are in the postseason. So, okay, cool. We're in a good spot still, right? Everything feels okay. Well, you got to go take advantage of some of these next games, because you don't want to get to a spot where the Mets have a chance to sweep you or anything. You don't want to let them win the series. The split is totally fine. It has been since the start of the series. That's not revisionist. That's something I said on yesterday's episode before Taijuan Walker completely blew that game. Am I being too mean? I don't really care at this point. He shouldn't be on this baseball team anymore. But anyway, we're talking about the future. We're on to tonight. A 7:10 p.m. first pitch. Remember, it's Friday Night Baseball. Apple TV Plus. Yeah, I know. Streaming services. What are you going to do? But go ahead and check it out. And Cristopher Sanchez is on the mound facing off against David Peterson. Now, Sanchez, 10-9 with a 3.24 ERA, 1.23 whip. Here's where he's been really good. In 172 innings pitched, he's only allowed 9 home runs. For example, David Peterson, who's actually been pretty good at limiting the home runs as well, he's allowed 8 in 110 innings pitched. So you add 62 more innings there, and Sanchez has only given up 1 more home run. Peterson's also walked more guys in his 110 innings than Sanchez has in 172. So you can be a little bit patient. The strikeouts, 89 for Peterson in 110. So he's a guy that walks guys, but he also doesn't strike out a bunch. Now, that is a good combination for the Phillies. And hold the phone. Do we have a lefty starting pitcher for an opposition team? Yes. So, and finally get to talk about some of those righties who are going to have the better handedness matchup in this type of game. You'll probably see Yohan Rojas back out there in center field. Don't know what they're going to do in left, if it's going to be Weston Wilson or if Brandon Marsh is going to get the opportunity. But maybe this is a moment for Alec Boehm, who went 0 for 4 last night, to break out of this. I mean, he went yard 2 games ago. But let's look at what David Peterson did last time out against the Phillies, because his last start was in the last Phillies-Mets series last week, and the final score was that 2-1 walk-off win for the Phillies. He went 7 2/3 innings. He allowed only 4 hits and 1 earned run. He walked 1. He struck out 6. Not a crazy stat line. The Phillies just weren't creating enough opportunities, right? But 6 strikeouts and 7 2/3 innings pitched, that's nothing crazy, right? And just looking at some of his recent outings, 6 strikeouts against Philly, 2 against Toronto. Then he had 11 against Boston through 6 innings. That's a little bit concerning. But before that, 4 against the Diamondbacks, 2 against the Padres. That's why he's not a big strikeout guy. That's why you should not be striking out more than 5-6 times against David Peterson. You should be able to take advantage. Even though he's 9-2 with a 2.85 ERA, those numbers would show you that he's better than he actually is. He's been pitching for this team while they've been hot, and they've been giving him a lot of run support. And I look at it at a 1.31 whip, and I say, okay, he's a gettable guy that if you put runners on base and you get clutch hitting, you can have a big night today. Big night tonight, not a big night today. Big night tonight against David Peterson. Now, who are the guys that you have to keep an eye on when it comes to the New York Mets? Well, Pete Alonso went yard last night. Mark Vientos went yard last night. They showed off a lot of pop, but I attribute that significantly more to Taijuan Walker's throwing batting practice than these guys are majorly dangerous hitters. Obviously, Francisco Lindor has been unbelievable this year for them, and Pete Alonso is always a really good power hitter. He's got 34 homers and 87 RBIs. For example, Schwarber's leading the Phillies with 35 homers. So, yeah, I don't know. You stay away from the big guys. They have a solid team, the Mets. I don't want to act like they stink, right? Some people have been saying, because of the stuff that I said on the radio, and I talked on the radio, one of my coworkers, John Kincaid, is convinced that the Mets have been the best team in baseball since the London series. And I say they have the best record since then, but that doesn't mean they've been the best team in baseball, right? The best team in baseball is the team that I believe has the highest ceiling on any given night. And I think the Phillies are the better team than the New York Mets, even if record since that London series doesn't indicate that. And the Mets are hot right now. They stayed hot last night. You're going to have to cool them off, and there's one way to do that, right? You don't cool them off by going out and just slugging, right? You don't cool them off by going out and scoring 6, 7, 8 runs. You clearly see that last night. They'll match you. What you have to do is you have to get an outstanding start from Cristopher Sanchez tonight, and he's a guy that's totally capable of it. We talked about the most recent starts for David Peterson. Let's look at the most recent starts for Cristopher Sanchez. And his last time out, he pitched against Peterson in that Mets series. He went 7 innings. He allowed 6 hits, 1 earned, and 1 home run, which was the only earned run, but 7 strikeouts. The previous one against the Rays, 6 innings, 4 hits, none earned. Against the Blue Jays, 7 innings, 6 hits, 2 earned. Against Atlanta, the time before that, 5 2/3 innings, 7 hits, 2 earned. Did give up 4 runs, but only 2 of them earned, 8 Ks. He's won his last 4 starts, or rather, the Phillies have won his last 4 starts. So he's been throwing well. He's been putting you in a good enough position to succeed. If you allow 2 or less runs, I mean, it's going to feel amazing compared to what Taijuan Walker gave you the night before. But you need to get through like the first 2-3 innings clean. You can't let the Mets get momentum. I will say this for the Mets, right? And I do respect, like, as much as people are going to kill me for this, I respect the fan base up there in New York. I do. Because they, as I mess my hair all over the place if you're watching on YouTube, they absolutely have a strong fan base where those guys get up and ready for games, and they know when there's big moments. They're cousins of Philadelphia. They're cousins we hate. But when you look at that and you say, okay, I know the environment's going to be loud. I know they're playing for something. I know they might smell blood in the water. You have to approach that and say, we can't let them get on us early. We can't let them get an early lead. We can't strike out a couple times in the first 2-3 innings and go down without a whimper and make them feel comfortable and let them start hanging up the OMG sign or whatever the heck that thing is, the grimace seat and all the weird stuff that they have to do to keep momentum going up there. God, they annoy me. But bottom line is, if you let Citi Field get into it, it's going to be a much tougher environment for you to play in. Mets fans do also have a little bit of that heartbreak quotient, though, that we know here in Philadelphia so well. If you get up on them, they will give up. Not the team, but the fans. They will quiet. The Philadelphia fans have done that in the past at times, too, because you do believe in the other shoe dropping sometimes. So I know this might sound like outside the realm of what we should actually be talking about, but in these games, like we talk about in October all the time, this is October light. This is late September in a postseason race, in a divisional race. In these games, the fans matter, momentum matters, the stadium matters, and this is going to be a tougher environment for the Phillies if they don't jump on the Mets early. So great start by Cristopher Sanchez, some early run support from guys at the top of the order. I'm looking at Alec Bohm. I'm looking at Trey Turner, who he's been putting some good swings on baseballs lately. I'm looking at those guys to be the catalyst for success for the Philadelphia Phillies in tonight's game. Again, keeping up with it. The magic number is 1. So if they win tonight, they're postseason bound. If they win tonight and tomorrow, or 2 of the next 3 games against the Mets, they are NL East champions. All of that is on the line. So why am I annoyed? Well, they've kind of been wasting some time now. And while I'm not too upset with them, I'm done with it. I'll tell you what I mean coming up next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. But let's talk about FanDuel first, because you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. First and foremost, you know them as America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5, and you'll get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel all anytime. In addition to that promo, I mean, come on, they've just got a bunch of great stuff you can bet on over at FanDuel. You got the NFL Week 3 coming up. You got the postseason push in baseball. Go ahead and check out FanDuel. They are, of course, we know, America's #1 sportsbook. So this time-wasting thing, right? It is starting to bother me a little bit. Now, I appreciate that you didn't waste time today and you made Locked On Phillies your first listen like you do every day. Please make your next listen Locked On MLB. Sully, Paul Francis Sullivan, he does a great job on that show, covering baseball in general. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, just like this show is. Also available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, but a great way to keep up with the division races around baseball. I mean, real quick. This deserves mentioning. I'm sorry. I know it's Locked On Phillies, but we're going to turn into Locked On Shohei Ohtani for a second. He becomes an enemy the second the Phillies match up with him in the postseason. But right now, 6 for 6 against the Marlins yesterday with 10 RBIs, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases, set the 50-50 club mark. That dude is either cheating somehow. I'm not talking about gambling. Cheating somehow, like he knows something we don't, or he's an alien, or he is just one of the greatest baseball players we have ever seen. An unbelievable night in Miami for Shohei Ohtani. We don't really have the chance to talk about it because we're Locked On Phillies, and that's fine. I like the Phillies better anyway. But Sully will talk about it on Locked On MLB, so go ahead and check that out next. Could the Phillies use one of those types of nights from one of their stars? Absolutely tonight, because this is a game that, well, it feels like it's amplified even more because of your failures in Game 1, or mainly, not yours, Taijuan Walker's failures in Game 1, or the organizational failure it took to put him out there. And I'm tired of them wasting time, right? You got into a situation in that series with the Milwaukee Brewers where your magic number got down to 1. And you haven't been able to close it out, I don't know if the team thinks about it like that. Like, I don't know if they show up every day to the ballpark and in the back of their mind, they think, we win tonight, we're clinched, we're in. Like, because their goals are so much higher than that. That would seem silly to be focusing on that. And I don't think they do. I think they're a mentally tough team. I think they know how October works. They've had success in the past. They know how this time of year feels. So I'm not too much worried about that. But I do think that they're aware of it, even if they're not thinking about it actively. And I do think sometimes when you're on the precipice of something special happening. Remember, what was it, last year the Judge hit 62 home runs or whatever, whenever that season was? He went like 3 days. He had hit like a home run every day, and then he got right to the limit or right to the edge of the record, and he went like 3 days without hitting one or 4 days without hitting one. When you get close, that pressure starts to mount. You do start to think about it, and it changes up a little bit. That just seems to naturally be the way things go. And the Phillies, well, they're close to clinching a postseason berth. So I get it. I just don't want them to wait around. I'm tired of them wasting time. I want to celebrate this, and the standings are getting tighter, folks. They are getting tighter. I'm giving you this with the tiebreaker. So the Phillies, they have the tiebreaker over the Dodgers. So they're currently the 1 seed if the season ended today in the National League. Great. Perfect. Everything's good. They're only up 3 games over the Brewers. But remember, with the tiebreaker, you've got 4 games technically on the Brewers because you would get the tiebreak over them, the season series against both those teams looming large. The Padres are kind of sneaky back there. The Padres are only 4 games back of you. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Phillies still have the tiebreaker over them. But either way, that's another team that's kind of breathing down your heels. And now the Mets are 6 games back. That feels a little bit tight to me. I know, 6 games with, what do they have? 3, 6, 9 more games to play. There's no way in the world that you should ever blow that. I'm not thinking about a year that I'm not going to list that starts with a 2 and ends with a lucky number. I'm not thinking about that season. I'm not. I believe the Phillies are still going to win the NL East. I believe they're going to be a top 2 seed. They're going to get a first round bye. They're going to be in the postseason. All of these things are going to happen for this team. They're too good for it not to. But can we just stop testing it, right? Can we just finally, okay, boys, now's the time to stop messing around. And I want to use the term that's not messing around, but because we're on the podcast here, I'm trying to keep things clean. I won't use the other word I'm thinking of, but that's the tone of this right now. Hey, boys, I get it. You got time. You don't have that much time, right? You have a little bit of time left, and I'd like to see you lock this down so I don't pull my hair out in the next week worrying about, oh my God, are we seeing a collapse? It's not going to happen. But every day that they don't clinch is another day closer to me thinking about it. And I do not love that. Plus, I want to see this team get set up for October. I don't want that national series at the end of the year to matter. I don't want this Cubs series coming up next to really matter all that much. I want them to be able to set their rotation. I want them to be able to throw like a bullpen game or something. I guess they don't have to really set their rotation all that much because you're going to get a week off if you get that first round bye. But I want you to be able to get there without having to stress about it, without having to play up to the final day, without having to worry about where you're going or who you're playing. Get the bye, move on with the rest of your regular season, finish out with a win total around 97, which was my predicted win total for the year, which would be nice if they hit that on the head. Still possible. But just get there because I'm tired of worrying about it. And I don't know if the other thing, right, the celebration when they do, I don't think it'll be a big one for the playoff clinching because they've been in the past 2 years now. This is kind of old hat, but I do also want to see how they celebrate winning the division. It'll tell me a little bit about this team. I want them to celebrate everything, but how much do you celebrate? I imagine when you clinch the postseason, it's going to be like a small champagne toast where Rob Thompson stands in the middle and there might be like 2 bottles in the clubhouse and everybody gets a glass that wants one. You know, kind of sit around, you have a couple, maybe you have an additional beer after that. And you say, hey guys, great work, still work to be done. Then the NL East obviously is going to be the T-shirts, the bottles popping, throw the tarp all over the locker room. I've got to be in one of those once in my life. It was amazing. So yeah, that's going to be wild, but let's see what the messaging is during that. Let's see what the focus is during that. Is it, boys, mission accomplished for the regular season? Now let's go to October. Or is it, hey, boys, enjoy this first division title in 13 years, but guess what? We want the 1 seed. We want the 2 seed. We want to dominate. We want to be better than the Yankees, who have the best record in the American League, so that we have home field advantage if we go to the World Series. We want all of these things more in the regular season still. How ambitious is this team, and what is the strategy around that? We can't get to those points until you guys win a damn baseball game. So go out there, take care of business tonight against the Mets and David Peterson. By the way, the analytics on tonight's game, the Phillies only have a 45.2% chance to win. The Mets, 54.8% chance, a better chance for the Mets, according to this. I disagree. The Phillies are minus 105 on the money line, the Mets minus 115. So it's a very interesting spot there from the lines if you're a betting person. And I don't know what that here. I do know what that says. I was going to say, I don't know what that says about the outcome of the game. It's going to be close. It's going to be a tight game. Could go either way. I think Cristopher Sanchez is the better pitcher. I think the Phillies are the better team. I still think you have the better bullpen. And I think it's time to make up for what Taijuan Walker couldn't do last night. So fingers crossed that we'll be celebrating. By the way, tomorrow, I will do an episode if the Philadelphia Phillies clinch. We will celebrate it here on Locked On Phillies because I don't have to play a baseball game the next day. If they clinch, we will go ahead and put together a welcome to the postseason episode for the Philadelphia Phillies that I will post tomorrow. So we will get that out. I've been waiting to do that for a couple days now. It'll be nice to do that. We also have some interesting stuff over the weekend. Sunday, I'm going to be recording a playoff preview because the Phillies, they're going to be in October. But I'm going to be recording it with a lot of folks around our Locked On MLB channel. We'll look at some opportunities for who has the best chances to win it. So that'll be some good content coming next week. It's nearly October. The Phillies just need to take 1 or 2 final little steps, and we can all celebrate. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you again for making us your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. Trust me, it really does matter, and I sincerely appreciate you if you've done that or are going to do that. I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.